This is the early afternoon of the 28th of October. Clip put up by Max Kuhn, Kuhn. Title, Real Doctor, quote, I don't think Trump had an MRI, end of quote. Let's listen to this 9-minute clip.
That he had an MRI. However, I don't think it was actually an MRI that he had. So let's get straight into it, okay? Of course, as you know by now, and as the whole world knows by now, on Air Force One yesterday during the press gaggle, when they were peppering him with questions, one of the reporters brought up that he had been to Walter Reed a few weeks ago and asked him if he had had any advanced imaging, and in fact he asked him specifically if he had had an MRI. And Trump, let's just see what he said. I'll just play the clip.
You know, Walter Reed mentioned advanced medical imaging. Did you get an MRI? Can you tell us what that was?
I got an MRI. It was perfect. Yeah. I mean, I gave you the full results. We had an MRI, and in the machine, the whole thing, yeah. And it was perfect. Yeah.
Did you say what in particular?
I even asked the doctors. In fact, we have doctors traveling with us, but I think they gave you a very conclusive. Nobody has ever given you reports like I gave you. And if I didn't think it was going to be good, either I would let you know negatively, I wouldn't run, I'd do something, but the doctor said some of the best reports for the age, some of the best reports they've ever seen.
There's one thing that I want you to see. So he talks about the machine. Okay, I want you to pay close attention.
And in the machine, the whole thing.
So this was his gesture.
Yeah, like a... Yeah.
That's a clue. That means something. It's super common for people to confuse an MRI and a CT scan.
I was wondering if there's going to be a CAT scan now.
Right? An MRI and a CT scan, CAT scan, as it's commonly known, of course, it images your body from the inside. So we might use an MRI for specific conditions that we're looking for or monitoring or tracking, and we might use a CAT scan, a CT scan for other things. But the clue here is in how the test is performed. So if a person is having an MRI, you lay on a table. Anybody that's had an MRI...
And it's a giant...
So both of them are kind of like a big donut. An MRI is usually a little bit smaller. It's almost more like a tube. All of the newer ones are a little bit closer to a CAT scan, but a CAT scan machine is more like a donut with a bigger hole.
Oh, okay.
But here's the key difference. In an MRI, or when a person's having an MRI, you lay on the table and they slide you into the MRI machine, and then you sit there. You lay there in a static position, fixed, for usually at least a half an hour, if not longer. But in a CAT scan, a CT scan, you kind of go in and out of the machine. And that gesture that he made suggests to me that he didn't have an MRI, he confused. And remember, the reporter is the one who put the idea of MRI in his head by asking the question, did you have an MRI? Trump being Trump, yeah, I had an MRI. Yeah, no problem. It was fine.
We had a machine.
Yeah, right. I think most likely he had a CT scan, not an MRI. But what's the relevance of that? Why did he have a scan at all? Is there any reason to have a CT scan, some sort of a routine screening scan? There's really only one that would be applicable in a case like this. That would be a coronary calcium score, which is done with a scanner. You go into a CAT scan machine and it scans your heart and looks for a buildup of plaque and calcium inside the arteries of your heart. So it's possible it might have been a test like that. But otherwise, there's no screening test. He's not a smoker. He's never been a smoker. So there would be no reason to scan his lungs as a screening test. So he probably had some sort of a diagnostic test. Either they were looking for something to rule something out, or he had some sort of procedure done, and then they were tracking the progress of the procedure, making sure that it's okay. Now, there is no way to know. He could have had a scan of his brain. He could have had a scan of his organs. this is an MRI or a CAT scan. Again, I don't know if he had an MRI or a CT. It could have been either.
Yeah.
Watch what eggs.
But it seems to me like it was a CT scan. If we knew that he got dye in his veins, then that may help us to possibly know what it was. But obviously there's no information, and they certainly aren't going to release any information about what this actually was for, the reason that he had the test. But it's an interesting development with his health, and that they are now imaging his body from the inside. Now, he said he was okay. They told him he was okay. So I think the things that might be at the top of the list of why they would have scanned him, if he had an MRI, the main reasons we order an MRI would be to look at your joints, at like a bad knee or a bad hip or something like that. I think he probably does have a bad knee. So it's believable that he would have had an MRI of a knee to see how bad his knee is, or maybe a hip. The other common reason that we order an MRI, again, this isn't the only reason we order MRIs, but another common reason is to get a better image of the brain. So it's certainly certainly possible that he may have had some brain imaging done. They told him you don't have a brain tumor, so everything's fine. Now, entirely speculating, we still have no idea why he would have had any of those things done, but what probably might have been more likely is that he was having a CAT scan done and they were looking possibly at his vasculature, his blood vessels. We already know that he's got a blood vessel problem. You'll remember his ankles and his chronic venous insufficiency. I suppose it's possible that they may have done some vascular work on him, and perhaps they wanted to scan him and they would have injected him with some dye to perhaps see how open his blood vessels are. So there's a couple of different possibilities. Still, an interesting development. The President of the United States has had some sort of internal imaging, and we have no good idea why.
Yeah, I mean, it plays into the theory of the videos we've made previously of seemingly a heart condition of some kind. I mean, not the only doctor who has speculated on that.
Absolutely.
And this seems to be another piece of evidence that maybe in a vacuum doesn't really mean a whole lot, but when looked in totality,
right,
it seems interesting. There's a thing he said in there.
Yes.
And I heard him say, or I wouldn't run.
Like I gave you, and if I didn't think it was going to be good, either I would let you know negatively, I wouldn't run, I'd do something, but
I wouldn't run, that's what I heard.
I wouldn't run. I don't know what that means. What do you think?
I made a TikTok about this, but I don't know what he could be referring to, because he doesn't run, he doesn't jog, he doesn't walk really anywhere, he doesn't have to. Right. So it's not like an athletic run.
Yeah.
There's only one other type of running a politician does, and that's for office.
Yes.
There seems to be a broader conspiracy potentially here, because I think Trump kind of has toddler brain. He just says the last thing he heard, which is the whole machine thing. We're leading into that he doesn't know how to lie about some things. He just can't.
Right. He just goes with it. He doesn't understand the implications or importance of a president of the United States having an internal scan of his either organs, tissues, bones, brain, who knows what, and we don't know why.
So first of all, the scan, like you said, seems to be like a CT scan or a CAT scan, which develops the theory of potentially a heart condition, adds evidence, and then he's saying, I wouldn't run. Or I wouldn't run. Run for what, Trump? For House? Or for Senate?
For Vice President in 2028?
Yeah, so that's an interesting nugget.
Yeah.
That I'm going to take, and I made a TikTok about it, a whole theory I have. It's interesting to hear from the horse's mouth, as you say, I wouldn't run.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting...
Absolutely. So, as always, we will be keeping very close eye on Trump's health, and we're always okay to speculate a little bit. So, interesting development. We'll see how the White House responds to Trump's admission of some sort of a scan, MRI, or maybe like what I think probably a CT, and if we can get any further details on what that imaging was.
We'll see if any of the press is brave enough to even question him about it either. So
It's going viral all over the place. So people are wondering.
they are wondering.
All the socials will be at the bottom, and thank you.
So what do you think, huh? I'll attach the link. Pass it along, and thanks for listening.